Shoddy is a textile term describing old material that's been reprocessed into new fabric.
To me, we still use the word waste, but it isn't. I mean, I can see a batch of rags, and if it's a really particularly nice, I can get very excited about it. And they're beautiful, gorgeous rags, and you can start to get quite enthusiastic.
We're iinouiio, and we're promoting traditional Yorkshire textile recycling. And we're doing this because every second the equivalent of one garbage truck of textiles is landfilled or burned. And textile dyeing is the second largest polluter of water globally. For example, it takes 2,000 gallons of water to make one pair of jeans. So where does the textile revolution by iinouiio fit into all of this? Hi, my name is John Parkinson from iinouiio. Thanks very much to the Knitting and Crochet Guild for inviting me to give this 30-minute talk about iinouiio and the textile recycling industry in Yorkshire, UK. It all started around 200 years ago. Different historians have different ideas about when it did start. Somewhere around 1813 is kind of the general consensus of when it started. It was a guy called Benjamin Law that was a clothing manufacturer that went down to London on Bartholomew's Day with his agent and his collaborators, his colleagues that worked in different mills, and they all worked together, and they had a London agent to sell the cloth, and they all met up each year at this conference where they'd try and sell the cloth. And each year Benjamin Law went to visit a saddler who he saw just as a friend, and this particular year he was in his shop and he was looking through these saddles, and he saw one that had got a little tear in it, and outside the tear was something we call flock, which is very roughly ground up old rags that would have looked something like that in both colour and also in its kind of consistency and constitution. It would have looked something like that. Not the kind of stuff that it used to be spinning, new wool, but something that a skilled manufacturer would be able to start to go like this and just start to I'm not sure this, I just wonder, probably, he thought. And he got talking to the saddler, and it turned out that this material was the cheapest material that he could have ever imagined. And he thought, well, if I could just make that spin, that would be a much cheaper alternative than what he already uses. So he arranged for some bales to be delivered, and they were sent up to his mill, and in secret he started to devise ways in which he could grind it up, shred it up, even though there'd been some of this activity before for flock, mostly used for fillings for beds and mattresses and stuff. He wanted it for respinning, and so the machines weren't fine enough. So for months and months and months, he trialed this system of getting old clothing back into a fibrous state that could be made into a yarn, and then new clothing once more. And he started with it all in its grey state, just to see if he could make it happen, if he could make it work. And eventually he had to try different machines and work with different engineers, but he perfected it until he got to the stage where he could sort all the different clothing items into different colours and recycle it back to fibre and respin it and make a cloth that was cheaper than all the other manufacturers could make. And at that time, in the early 1800s, the United Kingdom was supplying cloth to the world, so this was potentially massive, but it was all done in secret. Even the people that he let into his circle, and there weren't many, were sworn to secrecy. And even one particular man, Benjamin Parr, who was a family member who helped him, was sent to Scotland to buy the rags from Scotland, so people wouldn't, in the local area, wouldn't know what he was up to, what Benjamin Law was up to. So off he went to Scotland and shipped rags down, so it could all be done in secret in Howley Mill and in other places that he trusted to happen. So much in secret was what Benjamin Law was doing, he actually dissolved his partnership with his agent and two other clothing manufacturers, cloth manufacturers that he was working with in Yorkshire. just so that they wouldn't find out what he was doing. And so he went on his own, but so ambitious was Benjamin that he wanted to make sure that he could sell as much as he could sell without other people finding out his secret. So he sent his son John to America, where they'd not really figure out how he manufactured this material, and he sent him on a ship with a whole range of different fabrics that they'd made. And John went to America and he sold everything that he went with and came back with a load of money and was hailed a hero in the family. So Benjamin was so excited by this, he thought, I tell you what, we'll get everything that we've ever made and we'll make it into cloth, we'll fill a boat full of stuff and we'll send John over and sell that, and we'll just make lots of money doing this. John said to his father, Benjamin, that he wouldn't go back to America. We're not sure why that was. We don't know whether it was because of it's nearly always a girl that he met in America the first time he didn't want to see again, or is it a girl that is leaving in Batley that he don't want to that he'll miss if he leaves. And he said to somebody that if his father sent him, he'd never return, but his father insisted. John went to America, but Benjamin didn't hear anything from him. Benjamin, some time later, he went over to America to try and find his son, and no doubt all his stock, and there was no sign of him. But when he started to ask around, some people in New York, where the ship had docked, had said, well, there was somebody around here that looked a bit like you and had an accent very similar to yours, but he's disappeared. He's gone down to New Orleans, and he seemed to have a lot of money, but they've got yellow fever in New Orleans. Benjamin never went to New Orleans to try and find him, and he never ever met his son again. Nor did he find his stock or ever recover any money. He came back to Batley, where he first started his work with recycled fibres, to find that the people who he'd been in collaboration with, his partners, had discovered his secret, had discovered his machines, and had already started to set up their own business, manufacturing reclaimed fibre that we know in the region of the heavy woolen district called shoddy and mungo. And he didn't have the heart, having lost his son and lost his business, he didn't have the heart to start again, and he left and moved away from the area, went to live in Lancashire. And so, like so many inventors, Benjamin Law, the inventor of what became known as shoddy, didn't financially benefit from what he'd made, from the discovery, the discovery that actually changed the face of woolen cloth manufacturing in the world for the rest of time. So these strange terms, shoddy and mungo, shoddy, we're not really sure where it came from, and it's got that unfortunate connotation of being something inferior, but perhaps the short fibres and irregular length and thickness of the fibres could be a reason why it got that term. Mungo, many people say that it's because when they were trying to produce mungo, which are fibres recovered from woven cloth that are even shorter than the fibres from knitted materials, which is shoddy, that when they were trying to make mungo, it was very, very difficult, and they were told, Benjamin Law and Benjamin Parr were told it would never work, and Benjamin Parr said, it mungo, of course in Yorkshire, it must go. And that's the kind of reason that people think it was called mungo. But there is an interesting variation on that Benjamin Parr was sent up to Scotland by Benjamin Law to find rags to recycle, and there's the cathedral in Glasgow is the Cathedral of St Mungo, and so it could be that, well, it's not a massive leap to think that there's some connection there, given that it's an unfamiliar name. And some of you might know about Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets video game, and the Hospital for Magical Ailments and Injuries, which is on Mungo Bonham's chocolate frog card. Amazing that they talk about that word, amazing, because when you see the whole process of old clothes being fashioned into a fibre that can be respun again, then that's an amazing process, almost like a magical process to see. There's another interesting thing that as the trade started to develop and the mills sprung up all around the West Yorkshire region, making cloth for the world, and more people got involved, so there were what were called rag merchants on every street corner almost of some of the West Yorkshire towns like Ossett and Dewsbury and Batley and Morley, that were taking rags in from tatters, the old rag and bone man, and sorting them into colours and stuff, and taking all the spinning contaminants off. That somebody, before in all that mix, somebody heard about all this activity and walked from Huddersfield to Batley to get a job with his uncle that worked at the first ever mill built to produce just shoddy cloth, recycled fibre cloth. Interestingly, those people that built that mill and that made their money from it were the same partners of Benjamin Law that he sacked, if you like, when he made his discovery. And so Benjamin Law didn't prosper from it, but the people that he sacked from his partnership did. And one of them was the uncle of this person that lived in Huddersfield that walked to get this job in Batley at this mill. But he wasn't too impressed by having to work in the mill all the time, and so he had a few different jobs, and he worked on the railways, and he began, when he saw a young lad making tea for them, he thought, oh, I can make tea for them. So he started making tea, then he started making biscuits, and then his biscuits were doing okay and his tea were doing okay, but he thought he'd like to do better. And where he was lodging, somebody was making some beautiful biscuits that he loved the taste and smell of, and he got the recipe and he tried it, but they all went curled up and they all went kind of a funny shape, but gorgeous tasting. He took them to a festival, to a fair, because that's all he got to take, and everybody loved them. And those biscuits became known as brandy snap. And that first product that was so loved by people became so famous when he met somebody called Susan Fox, and that's where Fox's biscuits first started from. So the history and the legacy of textile recycling spans into lots and lots of different areas. The textile industry really blossomed in those regions as more and more textiles were recycled and used into uniforms for wars. People used to say when the cannons boomed, then Batley did also, and there was so much industry built up in engineering and textiles that fueled the Industrial Revolution in Northern England. And the old joke was that even the birds used to fly backwards in Batley so they didn't get soot in their eyes, because it was that sort of industrious and that busy. And that's the legacy, if you like, of the old textile recycling industry, that it produced cloth for people that could not otherwise afford it, and also made fabrics for uniforms and many different things. So it's had the real test of time. So where do we fit in all this 200-year story? In 1970, my dad started his own mill of recycling textiles after being a salesman for a textile recycling company, and 7 years later I joined him after spending my weekends and holidays there from school and stuff like that and learning about the trade. And we were doing the same kind of operation that had been done for all those 150 years before it, which is taking garments, knitted garments and some woven garments that had come through. By that time there were charities as well as the kind of collectors, the rag and bone men and all that kind of stuff, and factory waste, so material from weaving and spinning and yarn making, all those kind of the wastes from the factories as well, and making them into blends, sorting them into colours and qualities to make special blends for woolen cloth manufacturers who would buy blends made to a particular colour and a particular quality. So the skill of blending all these materials together was built up over generations and generations, and the rags used to have all the spinning contaminants taken off them. So there we go, all the zips and the labels and all that kind of stuff that might get in the way of the spinning. All those had to be cut off. All the garments sorted into the different colours, so there's no dyeing needed, because you're not just recovering the fibre, you're recovering the colour as well. And then goes through a machine, a rag pulling machine, we call it pulling, that's the shredding, that shreds it back to this kind of state. So those were all red jumpers not very long ago, and now this is fibre ready for respinning. And so that's just into a red colour, which is, that's a shoddy, that's made from knitwear. And so all those materials were all prepared for the woolen manufacturers. We didn't, in the 1970s and 80s, we didn't spin ourselves. We used to supply woolen manufacturers who were then putting it in their blends like other woolen manufacturers had done for 150 years as a cheapening agent for wool, but not necessarily telling the customers. The trade started to decline after the Second World War, and there were lots of reasons for this. We had the introduction of synthetic fibres that we hadn't had before, that were competing with wool fibres. People didn't need necessarily fibres that were going to keep them warm, as they got warmer homes and central heating and cars instead of buses, and heaters in the cars, and people switched from blankets, wool blankets on the bed, to polyester duvets. Fashions changed and the mills declined, and people started to learn how to do this very labour intensive process at much cheaper costs overseas. And so the whole industry started to decline, and by the end of the 80s we had very few customers left, and there were very few, after having hundreds of reclaimed fibre manufacturers in Yorkshire, we were one of the only a handful left. And we had to look at our business and decide how to develop from there. And we could see how the market would allow us, even in the end of the 80s, to perhaps work differently with the recycled fibres and make a product that was more responsibly manufactured in total. So using organic wool and organic cotton to blend with the recycled wool, and eventually we started to work with hemp that doesn't need pesticides and fertilizers. We started to work with recycled denim that is really volatile because it's cellulosic, plant-based, and it gets really hot when you're processing denim back, and one little spark and you've got fires all over. It's like spontaneous combustion. We worked with one of the first people to be making recycled polyester from plastic bottles, which we hear a lot about now, but that was new technology then. So many different things, recycled cashmere, all sorts of different things. And we did that through a company we started called Evergreen. And here's a range of yarns that we used to make in recycled wool, woolens, acrylics, recycled cashmere, recycled cotton, a whole load of other stuff. This was the denim yarn. And we marketed these products across the world. We didn't have the internet and we didn't have social media, but people got to know about us, and we had customers such as Esprit, Tesco, Debenham, and we made some fabulous car rugs for Mitsubishi. So all this that made this beautiful thick travel rug, all this was throwaway garments in the reds and the blacks and the greys that were sorted into the colours and shredded up and respun and made into this gorgeous travel rug, just as we made others. And there's the Evergreen label there that made rugs such as this in very much the same way that we used to sell when we went and did exhibitions and shows and festivals. And we built up a lot of trade with small designers and artisans, and unfortunately though, in 1995, that tricky denim stuff that's very flammable caught us out once too often, and the factory burnt down and we weren't able to continue. And even though we'd worked with some real pioneers of people trying to sort of work against fast fashion then 30 years ago,
and develop new techniques. The economy was not so great, and we had to close our business. And so off we went to make new careers for ourselves, and the kind of whole story came to a complete end with textile recycling in Yorkshire, where it all started all that time ago, when the last textile recycler, the last what we call shoddy manufacturer, closed in 2000. So at a time when we need solutions and to the environmental problems that we face and recycling more than ever, the last traditional recycler closed in 2000, and that there weren't another one until iinouiio started in 2020 officially, when we launched our website. And so we are now the only traditional textile recycler, shoddy manufacturer if you like, making yarns from reclaimed materials in Yorkshire. The only one that's doing it, and with the potential to develop what we're doing and do it even better than it's ever done before. So iinouiio was just that itch that won't go away. Even though we've been away doing other things for a lot of years, there was the chance to do something really special, to be able to maintain all the skills, the heritage, the authenticity of the textile recycling industry in Yorkshire, and to perhaps we were just before our time, all those years ago. Sufficient number of people didn't understand what we were doing or why we were doing it, because there were no other people doing it. We were the first in Yorkshire, probably the world, to do what we were doing. And even after all that, other people didn't sort of take on our work after our fire. More recently, we hear claims from lots of different textile factories of this is recycled, or this is that way, or this is this way that they're making things. But there are no other manufacturers making things in the old traditional way that we used to. And so it's great to be back to try and maintain those skills, maintain that heritage, and even teach new generations of how to do this, and let them teach us, when they've learnt that, better ways than we used to do. To start off, we had to sort through a batch of rags, and we took 2 tons of woolen knitwear, and we had to sort these into different colours. But because there used to be a standard batch of 40 or 50 shades, all sorted by the rag merchants that were all around the West Yorkshire area, it was really hard not to try and sort into all those colours again. But if we had done, we'd only have had 10 kilos of canary yellow and 10 kilos of lime green. So we had to get all the colours into a small family shade, and we managed to do that with these shades here, where we sorted every garment fitted into one or the other of these shades. And you can imagine, if you've got a Christmas jumper or a fair owl that's very patterned, it's got green and white and red and blue in, which one does it fit into? So we had all those decisions to make, and it's one of the reasons why you get so much character and texture in the yarns, because it's not one solid shade, it's a mixture of all the different garments that have come through the waste collection system over the years. So we had that challenge to make that kind of a range of colours in a DK, so it's in double knitting, and now we've got a chunky range in the same yarns as well. And we've also just started to develop some fabrics which are made from the same yarns as these. So we've got knitting yarns and woven fabrics that all coordinate together, so that whatever you're doing, it all fits together in terms of a colour scheme. And we've been able to market those by our online shop, that's www.iinouiio.com, and offer those to the craft industry, so to knitters, to hand weavers, hand spinners, machine knitters. So we have shoddy and what we call sliver, which is when it's gone through the carding machine, for felters and for hand spinners, as well as the knitting yarns and weaving yarns for hand weavers. So kind of
go out, take a look, and there's all sorts of different things on there, and new things coming on the whole time. So just before Christmas we'll have some gift presentation boxes with the patterns and all that kind of stuff, all from the from that website, as well as garments that are too good to shred up that are on our Depop website. So Knitwear by iinouiio on the Depop website shows all the better garments that we've taken out of there to save energy from recycling them again. They can get reused and it'll still save that energy, and the things that are not able to be reused and reworn can be recycled and made into new yarns to start a new life again. It's the kind of complete loop, if you like. And even the buttons and the labels that we take off as trimmings, we seek out new ways to use those in textile art, textile sculptures and different things, and the labels in fact tell the whole story about the traceability of where everything came from. If you could be bothered and you wanted to read every label, you'd know where each and every garment that we've recycled has come from. And so they got this complete loop of sort of this circular economy, as it's called now, which comes from the old shoddy trade. And what a terrible time to launch a new business. iinouiio. April the 1st our website went live, and we all know what's happened since then, the whole COVID thing, which has prevented us from being able to reach out to high street craft shops around the country, around the world really, to offer people the materials that we can produce on the doorstep. And that's something that we intend doing over the next few months, over the next year, as things return to whatever a new normal is going to look like. So in the meantime, things are available from the iinouiio website, but hopefully we'll have them much closer to everybody's doorstep as well, should they want to walk into a craft shop and buy what we can produce. And the reason for being able to do that, there are many reasons. When you think that textile production has been called the second most polluting industry in the world, and if we don't change the practices that we currently operate, and we don't act as examples to other textile manufacturers and to wider industry beyond, that things can be done more responsibly, can be done better, then we're not doing our bit. We're not fulfilling the little part that we can play in protecting the planet and its resources, and being able to sustain the growing number of people that live on the planet. When you think it takes thousands and thousands of gallons of water to make one pair of jeans, and the pressure on the availability of water is just getting tighter and tighter across the world. Also the thousands and thousands of tons that are landfill of clothing that's put in the ground each year, that the synthetics just won't biodegrade, so they'll be there for many thousands of years, and other materials give off harmful gases. There's just so many reasons to do this that all make good sense, but it won't happen if we are unable to be able to carry on doing what we're doing in a very depleted infrastructure of machinery in Yorkshire, and we're still trying to look at ways in which we might have our own mill and our own plant to help with that again. And unless we're able to get our message across, which I'm hoping to do now, as both an educational sort of message about the history and the heritage of which we all share in the UK and across the world, as textile recycling spread to Italy and India and parts of Europe such as Poland, and even across to America, especially on the East Coast. So many parts of the world sharing this story and know so little about it. So sort of the education is a really important part of the business we're doing, and we can't do that unless we're able to fund it by the example that we're trying to set of making materials more responsibly, and then offering them as an alternative for people to take advantage of. And that's just about all I can do, because I've kind of run out of my minutes, out of my time now. And as you can probably guess, given half the chance, I'd be still here tomorrow talking about the same thing. There are so many stories and so much more to tell, but I hope you've been able to gain an insight into what iinouiio are doing, and the heritage of which we all share in the United Kingdom and especially in West Yorkshire. So thank you very much for listening and for watching, and we hope to hear from you. If you look at the website, you'll be able to see there's an email contact number there. We'd love to hear from you, and all I can say is that we hope we can be supplying you with yarns for many years to come. Thank you very much. Goodbye for now.